Hi everyone, today we will be discussing owl pellet dissection. So what is an owl pellet? So to start off, owls swallow their prey whole or in large pieces but do not produce enough stomach acid to digest bones, fur, feathers, and scales. After several hours, a gizzard-shaped owl pellet is produced. Once this is formed, the pellet moves back into the owl's gland or stomach. So here we just have a picture of an owl pellet, and we can see that all the little bones have been dissected and the owl pellet is right behind it, so that's what it kind of looks like. Okay, so to start off you will need some owl pellets, and these are the ones that have been provided to me. This is a larger owl pellet that I have started dissecting already, but today we will be using sample 190, which is this one right here. It is just a little bit smaller than the one I have started on already. Alright, so this is just some equipment that you guys will need. I have some safety glasses right here, and then I have this pouch of tools with some scissors and dissecting tools that will help me out today. And most importantly, I have this white tray in which we will put our owl pellets in order to keep it nice and clean. So these three things are very important for today's dissection. Okay, so some more essentials that we will need for the owl dissection is this right here, which is just ethanol alcohol, which is about 95%. And along to go with this, we need a little bottle such as this one. And what we will do, we put the alcohol in here, and this way we could go ahead and squeeze this onto the owl pellets, making sure that they are hydrated. Okay, so lastly you will need some gloves. I have two types of gloves right here. I have this one, and then I have a plastic pair. Either one of these will do the job. And then optional, but I have a magnifying glass just to inspect the bones once I am finished. And then we have a lamp just in case you need a little extra bit of light. So first thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and take your pellet, and what I'm going to do here is go ahead and wet it with the alcohol, just because the owl pellets that I'm using today are a little bit older and they're a little bit harder. And then right here you can just go ahead and see that I'm using one tool to hold the pellet down, and with some tweezers I'm just going to go ahead and start picking out the pellet, and I'm just scratching off some fur and some dirt, and then with the tweezers as well, as I scratch off, bones start to appear. And with those, I just go ahead and pick them up and put them in a different area of the tray, just to make sure that my area is nice and organized. And this is just a side comment. I just wanted to show you what the process looks like. So I have tools in one side of the tray, and then I have the owl pellet right here in the middle. And so while I'm working, I'm just picking off parts of the fur and putting them to one side. And then anytime that I find any bones, I will put the bones on a different side, which you can see right here, and this way nothing gets mixed up and everything stays organized. Here we can see that some of my bones are out of place, so I'm just going to push it over here and make sure everything is organized, keeping bones in one place and the fur on the other side. Okay, now that you have your tray nice and organized, this is just going to be a little bit of a different angle of the owl pellet. I did have to re-wet the owl pellet a couple of times, just because, like I mentioned, it is a little bit dry and a little bit old. And I also realized that when you wet the owl pellet, it's a lot easier to work with, just because the consistency turns more of a muddy texture, which is a lot easier to scrape off the fur and get to the bones a little bit quicker. So just some helpful hints. When we were dissecting our owl pellets, since they were a little bit older and a little bit more dry, we noticed that when dissecting, the bones would break a little bit more easier as compared to when you have a fresher owl pellet. They kind of just crumble in your hands, as opposed to this one you kind of had to work with it a little bit more. And when you are picking one that is this old, you have to be extremely careful to make sure not to break any bones. Once you have finally completed the owl pellet, it should look something like this. So I have a ball of all the fur, and then I have all of my bones laid out in the tray, like I had mentioned, keeping it separate. And then what I'm doing now is I'm taking an old mason jar and filling it with water and alcohol. And so what I'm going to do is put the bones into the mixture just to make sure I get all the dirt and all the fur off of the bones. Okay, so at this point you should have all your bones into the mixture. And right here I just have a piece of paper towel and the mixture. So as you can see, all of the fur and all of the scraps will just float to the top, leaving the bone right at the bottom. And here I will just be digging out some of the bones and putting it on a piece of toilet paper. Another thing you can do also is use hydrogen peroxide with some water and leave it in for a couple of days. This will really clean the bones a little bit more and make them a little bit whiter as well. So you should have something that looks like this. So lastly, we will be using our magnifying glass to look a little bit closer at the bones to make sure we know what they are. Take a Sharpie or a pen and then go ahead and start categorizing them like I did here. And then this is just a chart that I used that I found online that shows all of the parts of the bone and what they are. Here is just a closer look of what I had categorized. Nothing is very specific yet, it's just a little bit of the jaw, hips, legs, but nothing too specific of what kind of animals were digested. So once you have all the bones organized like this, you can go ahead and start identifying what animals were eaten by the owl that day. And here we just have some pictures that we were taking while we were dissecting our owl pellets. So here's Viviana's and here is mine. So here is one of the videos we found extremely useful when we began to learn about dissecting owl pellets. This is by a YouTuber named Jeff the Nature Guy. We thought it would be extremely useful to show you what a fresher owl pellet looks like. As you can see, his owl pellet is a lot fresher, and we can determine this by the way it easily crumbles in his hand, like very loose soil. When learning about owl pellets and dissection, it is important to know that you must work with what you have, whether they be fresh from the ground or sitting for quite some time. Learning how to dissect both is extremely useful, and one requires a lot more care and detail as the other does from what we have seen today. This is another super helpful video from Trillium on YouTube. He shows what a fresh owl pellet straight from the ground would look like. This is useful information because when in the field, you might confuse this with nothing other than a rock or some other natural materials. Important key notes when looking for owl pellets in the wild: you must note that they may be a bit heavy, have a small odor, and can be identified by their furry and irregular shape. The quicker the owl pellet is stored and dissected, the better, as they begin to decompose and harden very quickly. And this concludes our owl dissection video. Thank you.